Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer for another faction reaction today. This time Sylvaneth, and I'm joined by Mat Mallow. Well, that's what I call him. Yeah, Matt. There he is. Hey, Matt. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, believe it or not, I do have a real name. No one uses it, but I do have one.
Well, that's your Twitch name, so to me, that's all you'll ever be now. Like, if that's okay,
Yeah.
like if you want me to call you something else, you tell me, and we'll change it up.
To be fair, I've started doing that now. So because it's a new season in terms of rankings and everything, I signed up to Carnage as Mat Mallow
Perfect.
because nobody knows me as Matthew. Everyone just if I say I'm Mat Mallow, they're like, oh yeah. So I just that's my name
That
now.
works. That works. Everyone, every
Yeah.
every like every gamer and T-Sport star should have themselves like a little pseudonym, in my opinion. But we'll see. So
Yeah.
Matt's on to talk about Sylvaneth, and I got to say that I got a huge amount of love for him as a Sylvaneth player, as a person as well, but also specifically as a Sylvaneth player because I think he's got like a lot to say, because he's obsessed with them. And Sylvaneth has been a very weak book for a very long time, but he's been trying to push that big heavy rock uphill. So looking forward to talking about it. Of course, this is live in front of a Twitch audience. Big shout out to the Twitch audience. Most of you, not some of you, specifically not you, Adam. Let's be clear about that. Adam, who's Matt's friend, and mine, I guess, is in the chat trying to give him as much drama as possible. So that's sweet. And you can listen to this as a podcast, of course, as well as potentially watching it on YouTube, whatever format you're doing. So thanks to everyone. Right, Matt. Before we get on to how you feel about Age of Sigmar 3 and what you think the winners and losers are, talk to me about how Sylvaneth played in Age of Sigmar 2. Because the book landed and it wasn't good. And just for everyone at home, for the Age of Sigmar Stat Center, which we do on the Honest Wargamer, Sylvaneth were pretty much running a sub 40% win rate for two different GHBs. They were doing very badly. So I'll just be clear that they weren't doing well. So Matt, when they were doing well, or what was happening in 2? How do you feel about it?
So with the new book in 2, because all I played was the new book. I never got an opportunity to play the
Okay.
old book that was good. So all I ever played was the new book. And I mean, like you say, we had a 38% win rate, I think it was. So if you won 2 games at a 5-day tournament, you were above average. Which is, not a great place for an army
No,
to
of
be
course
in.
not.
Um, but I did okay with them. I played 5 tournaments between. Well, I would have played more, but obviously lockdown happened. But between when the new book came out and between lockdown, I played 5 tournaments with them, and I managed to do not worse than a 3-2.
That's great work.
So win 3, lost 2, and including a Brotherhood, which is the big team tournament that happened. But the way you tended to build your lists then was if you wanted to play, the only list that did very well, at least in the UK scene anyway, was either Dreadwood, which gives you a command ability teleport for any unit anywhere on the board, or you took Heartwood, which was that's the more famous one, which is the artifact that lets you reroll all hit rolls for Kurnoth hunters. So everyone used to take like 25 bow hunters and then try and shoot.
We say everyone.
But that
It was more of it could have been a list as opposed to it ever really performing anywhere well.
Yeah, that's true. I never played it because I don't hate myself that much, but realistically, like you're just rolling the same dice over and over again, and you're hitting on 4s even with the rerolls. So it was if you got the 4s, it did okay. If you didn't, then it did nothing. From what I saw. But my list that I used to run was I used to run 2 units of 6 swords, controversially, uh, because my problem with scythes was that they were better for range, obviously because they have a 2-inch range, but their damage chart for the average damage that they do is so
So
inconsistent
this is
that
just
you
for
could
everyone at
throw
home.
them.
This is Kurnoth hunters with either swords or scythes. The great debate in every Sylvaneth conversation ever. You get 2 Sylvaneth players together. There is a guarantee, 100% chance that conversation occurs at some point. I think.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't even need 2 Sylvaneth players. Sometimes one will just
The one
initiate
Sylvaneth player is going to
it.
bring it up. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So you rated swords because they were more consistent in the damage, right?
They were more consistent, and you had a mortal wound output because on 6s to wound they do a mortal in addition, and they had more attacks, and it was it meant that you could throw 6 swords into a Maw Crusher and expect the Maw Crusher to die or thereabouts. You knew, like every time I threw him in, I expected them to do 20, 22 damage ish to a 3/4 up
Okay.
save. Whereas if I threw sides in, I could do 4 damage. I could also do 36, but I don't know.
And in a tournament setting,
Could
it's
be
far more
anywhere
important that
between.
you can rely on the thing doing the job, right?
Exactly. And the reasons that my next point is the reason Sylvaneth were kind of so poor a lot of the time was because their list to do anything, they're so unreliable. So Adam, you talk about Adam. Adam used to laugh at me because my turns were exactly the same. My first turn is exactly the same every single time in two. It was I took an artifact that made my branch wraith a 2-cast wizard, and you try and cast Throne of Vines, which gives you a +2 to your casting roll, and then you'd cast Spiteswarm Hive to give you +3 to your charge rolls on a 2-up. So you have to do a 5-cast spell, then a 7-cast spell, then a 2-up to even get your Kurnoths with the command point teleport, and then you had to do a 6-inch charge re-rolling because you normally had enough
Yeah.
CP. And if any of that went wrong, then you didn't do anything for your turn,
Okay.
basically. So you were really relying on dice, and that was the list I was doing well with. That was the best sort of list around was the Dreadwood one. There's a few variations. One took 9 scythes and 6 swords, but the 9 sides weren't a hit unit. They were more of a stand in front of everything and just try and get rid of
Right.
them. Because there are five wounds on a 4-up save re-rolling is a lot to get through. Not anymore, but theoretically
Yeah.
it was. Um, so that's kind of where it fell apart. And then the damage output in the army isn't outside of Kurnoths. There just wasn't any really because Alarielle was a meme.
She was a
Um,
meme.
she was a meme. Trio Ancients like
Well, can we talk about
on
why she was
average,
a
I think.
meme? Like, so, like, if we got
Oh yeah,
so
sure,
we
yeah.
compare. Let's compare it to let's do the big three: Archeon, Nagash, and Marathi. What was different about Alarielle versus those two? Three, sorry.
The fact the difference was that she didn't really have a niche. So like obviously Marathi can't die and does damage. Archeon has he has a lot of versatility because in Zeech you might want to hit, you're rerolling 6s against him, so he doesn't really die. He can go anywhere he wants. He just does a lot. And Alarielle, especially her old war scroll, she kind of just didn't do anything. Like she healed D3 a turn, she healed everything D3 a turn, which is okay, but not like everything in the arm. Nothing had a mortal wound save, so there was no kind of there was nothing to. It didn't matter because if anything shot you or did like 5 more wounds to you, you'd heal D3, you'd heal 2, and you'd still have taken 3. And onto like a Durthu, as soon as a Durthu takes 4 wounds, it's basically useless for the rest
Yeah.
of the game because his damage profile goes down from 6 to D6, which is a huge drop. And it just kind of added to the inconsistency that you already had. So it just kind of so when I played a lot of the way I played to win was to capitalize on my opponent's mistakes rather than create my own rather than win the game myself, if that
It
makes
does.
sense. Because the army's like the saying glass
Yeah.
cannon. Sylvaneth and 2 were just glass.
Less cannon.
They go
Less cannon.
they were just yeah, exactly. So they kind of died because everything has quite a high save outside of the heroes. A lot of heroes didn't really do much anyway. So you kind of got stuck in this trap of nothing does damage, and every time you try and commit something, you kind of know whatever you're committing is going to die. So you have to make sure that whatever you're committing is worthwhile. And because 2 was such a I did a lot of mental plays to stay in games. So I'd be like, right, if I teleport my 5 Tree Revenants to this corner of the board, make a 10-inch charge because I have a reroll on them. I have a 10-inch charge that I can pile in with a 6-inch pile in around, get onto that objective, and I'll score that 1 point, and then they'll die. It was a lot of that kind of play style, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
definitely.
There wasn't a lot of if I move this unit forward, charge it into, he should kill that. There wasn't a lot of that really.
Yeah, so you felt like you
So
weren't trading as much. You were just waiting for opportunities to score points.
yeah, essentially, because you couldn't go toe to toe with any army really in combat. You just kind of had to play objectively all the time. So I won a game once against 100 and what was it, well, you know the Ard Boys when Ard
Yeah,
Boys
like
first came out
75 hard
with the new
boys.
75 Ard Boys. I beat that list on what's the can't remember the battle plan, but it's the two where you just hold it and then at the end you
Oh
burn
yeah,
it
better
and you
part of
burn it
valor.
for how many points Better Part of Valor, this one. It was the old one. And I won that game because he decided to not move forward.
Classic.
Um, and then because he was worried about my teleporting, and then I managed to do one play, get a thing, and I won the game with 0 kill points. Um, so there was a lot of that kind of maneuvering type
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So give me some strengths and weaknesses of Sylvaneth in 2 before we move on. Strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. Okay. So strength was so the big strength that we had was board
Okay.
control. Because in my list I had 5 teleports a turn potentially. So I had 2 units of Tree Revenants, which can teleport anywhere on the board as their movement. You can teleport. I had a Tree Lord Ancient in my list at all times. So I could do. You can travel through from one Wildwoods to another
Yes.
Wildwoods. So you can do one. You could the one unit can do it to another Wildwood, or the Tree Lord Ancient can do it in addition to one
Hmm.
other one. So you can whack him on an objective or whatever. Um, and then I've got the command point teleport from Jedward. So having 5 teleports a turn means that my army can basically just stay wherever I want it to. I don't need to play the game that everyone else
Yeah.
is
Of
playing
course.
because I could just sit at the back. Essentially, that was kind of the big one. And in turn, that kind of gave you, as a sort of second strength, that gave you the ability to kind of pick and choose your engagements, which you needed to do. So you could, I could deploy my whole army at the back of the board, and then just go, okay, he's left his keeper of secrets not um, screened properly, so I can put 6 Kurnoths into him, and I know I can
Yeah.
kill it. That kind of thing, and then I roll a 4 on my Throne of Vines, and I'm like, okay, maybe I won't do that. Uh, so that was kind of the thing. So the weaknesses was, like I say, the unreliability of the list was what was like. If I went into like a hard matchup, if I went into Zeech, if I went to Seraphon weren't out at that point, but if I went into Seraphon now, when they were playing into, if I went into anything that had any kind of magic movement, any hard top tier list, if I failed my first turn, if I didn't get any of those spells off, I was I was already fighting an uphill battle, and any of that happened, and I was fighting to skin of my teeth type thing. It
Okay.
was it became very
So
difficult.
you went also. So this is before lockdown. During lockdown, you were also playing a lot of TTS and using Sylvaneth as well, right? So you were
Yeah.
you maintained your gamesmanship over the course of the past like year and a half during lockdown. So you also had those experiences via TTS as well. So you were still trying to churn out the play
Yeah.
style. So I think that's something to note for everyone at home because like Matt hasn't given up on the army at any point. He's been religiously playing it for like 2-3 years straight. So when he talks about like having played it a lot, he's genuinely talking about having played it a lot. That's why I approached him to talk about Sylvaneth. I couldn't think of anyone I'd prefer to talk about it. So let's talk about Age of Sigmar 3. Age of Sigmar 3 comes around, ignoring of like what it really does to Sylvaneth, because we're about to talk about in a minute. How do you feel about it as a game? Like, how do you feel? What are your hot takes, top levels? What are your thoughts?
So I really like it. I actually really enjoy playing it. AOS 3. I mean, 2 was getting pretty stale by the end of it. I
Okay.
think. I think a lot of people felt that way. It was getting a bit boring. It was getting pretty repetitive. It was things. So I actually really like a lot of the. It's a hell of a lot more interactive now, and I think it's only going to get more so as people play more
Yes.
games. So I have only played I played 6 games this weekend at your tournament. Um, and I played maybe 4 games before that. So I've only played like ten
I mean, it's
games,
probably as much
and
as anyone in the
already
world at the moment.
no, exactly. But like already, like by the end of my last game that I played with you, like I was noticing things that like until you play games you won't know. So things like how important if you have spell portal in your list, how important unbinding it in your opponent at the start of your opponent's hero phase actually
Loads.
is. So they can't do it in your hero phase, and you can't
Yeah.
recast it. Like there's things like that that until you play, and play loads, you won't pick up on, and people will catch you out, and you'll be like, oh, I needed to do like you'll think reliably. So like I think that's going to happen a lot in this edition. I think you'll play against players who are playing like Kairos in Zeech, for example, and they'll forget to unbind spell portal in their turn because they're not bothered, and then because it's in a good position
Yeah.
for them, and then at the start of your turn you can take it off them, and then suddenly they can't cast their 6 mortal wound
Mm.
spell. And I think there's going to be a lot of sort of catching out with that, which I think people are going to think. And things like rally as well. Rally is going to be so much fun for a lot of people and so much pain for others.
Yes, 100%. And heroic
Yeah,
actions, right?
yeah, and heroic actions are massive. Heroic actions are having the ability to heal D3 for a lot of armies is huge. Like Gotrek, Kairos, Archeon, any big hero really that didn't have a way to heal before that can now just heal D3 if they're all below their bravery, and most of them are bravery 10 anyway. So I think that's going to be pretty
Okay.
massive. Yeah.
Anything else about 3?
I think. Oh, the other one is redeploy. Redeploy is going to be
Okay.
huge. If you can learn to use redeploy well, you'll be better than the majority of people who play Warhammer.
Have
I
you had
think.
any thoughts on how to use it well?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. I think it's very army dependent though, because I think it's very dependent on what you want to do
Right.
with it. So I played against Gargants on the weekend, and he left his Gargant just off the edge of the objective, um, to bait me into taking it off him, with a
Hmm.
L'Ariel, and he wanted me to move onto it, and then he was going to redeploy, so he would count as 15 and I'd only count as 5 back onto the objective.
Yes.
So like if I'd have fallen for that, that would have been quite a big deal because then I would have already moved and then he would have redeployed, and so that was a really good play. Um, Unfortunately for him, I did it with I did it with tree revenants from behind anyway, and they teleported, not moved. So that he couldn't do it. But it was still like things like that, and there's lots of different ways to do it. Things like blocking your opponent off, filling up gaps. I've done it a few times where I've left the Lariel open with some true revenants on the side and then just moved them up just to fill in a gap.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, especially for like a
and
sneaky
things like
character that's
that.
trying to, you've got 2 screens maybe, especially because it's hard to screen with the coherency, and then you use another
Yeah.
unit to kind of fill a gap where maybe they thought, and also it's a nice way to bait them into what they think is a gap for a charge, and then you redeploy another screen in front, and then you kept a little bit more safe, which I think is quite nice. I agree with you. I think there's
Yeah.
still so much play. All right,
Yeah.
let's talk about the winners and the losers. Yeah, let's hope there's a lot more in the
Yeah.
winner section, but probably not. So let's all just be really clear as well before Matt starts talking about it. This is an army with a 38% win rate that only went up points in this edition. It didn't go down any points. It got a new unit. It got like ways for trees to change and some other stuff. I'm sure Matt's going to talk about it. But like this isn't what, if you're listening and being like, oh, these are going to be brilliant. Like in this commentator's humble opinion, no. Like it's really simply, yeah. Hey, gods of dice, hello, Angle, and everyone else in the chat. Thanks for joining us live. So like sometimes there just aren't books that aren't as good as other books, or books that just aren't given the tool sets or are too expensive. Things like that happen. So this is to prefix before Matt talks. So Matt, like winners, what do you think? What are winners from the book?
So weirdly, I think a lot of, even though everything went up in
Mm,
points. So my winners comes with a caveat that everything is a little bit over expensive now. Um, so it's like they're winners, but they're, if they were a little bit cheaper, then they'd be actual
mm.
winners. But relative winners. I think all the monsters, to be honest, like Trilod Ancient is actually good now.
Okay.
Um, I think it's. I've seen a lot of arguments about whether the Trio Ancient's command ability used to be reroll ones to save for everything wholly within
Yeah.
18 of him, and Kurnoth Hunters always count as being in range and extend that range by 12. So basically, you can have a board wide reroll ones to save. In this edition, it's changed to be +1 save,
Okay.
which if you'd have given me that in 2, I would have cried in enjoyment. But in 3, obviously, it's a little bit. There's an argument that it's almost worse because you have so many ways of getting +1 to
You do.
save.
You do.
Um, However, I still think it's really good. I think having being able to do that in the hero phase, because the hero phase command ability, and it lasts until your next
Which
hero
is great.
phase. And there's not that many of them, which is awesome. So that's what I
That
mean.
plus
Like, so
Mystic
having
Shield.
+1 save. Yeah, that's what I mean. So you do Mystic Shield, and then in the hero, and then in the combat phase, you could do that on a Dirthu, throw him forward. He's on a 2-up save, ignoring Rend 1, and then you don't have to worry about using the command point defensively. if you wanted to do, you could do all out attack, or you could use do you know what I mean? There's lots of
Or you
options
could
offensively
ignore
as
Rend
opposed
2,
to.
right? Because you could do all out defense to ignore Rend 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for
And the
everyone, so
offensive
you
part
understand what we mean. There's save stacking in Age of Sigmar now. So basically, when I give someone +1 save, 100%. If you've got a 4-up save, you can go to a 3-up save, and a 3-up save, you can't get any better than a 3-up. However, if I give him an additional +2 for a total of +3, what it means is when you -1, you -1 from my pool of +3, so you go back to -2. And then obviously because you've given yourself +1 save, that doesn't change. So you still have from a 4-up save, you still have a 3-up save. So what you're able to do is just keep adding +1s to save, so that if anyone hits you with any minus, you're still going to get your +1 save, which is actually crazy good on units that already have a great armor save, like Durthu, Alarielle, Tree Lord Ancients. I think that's really what you're referencing, Matt, right?
Yeah, of course, and we have so many options for this because all of our heroes are big and
Yeah.
monstrous, really. The ones you want to take anyway. So Tree Lord Ancients are really good now. Tree Lords they exist. I'm
So,
not.
so
They
why
just
why do you think True Lord Ancients have got better specifically? The command ability.
the command ability, yeah, because Tree Lord Ancients fit a niche because they don't do any damage, really, not reliably so anyway. But they have their ability is that once a game they can summon a Wildwoods. And with the way the Wildwoods have changed, which I'll talk about in a minute, that's actually quite
Okay.
good. So I have it. That was always taking the. There's no chance in it. It's just an ability that happens. You just wholly within 18, you
Yeah.
summon a Woods. And Woods for board control are fantastic. So that on its own is a good ability. And then being able to. He is 295 points now, which is
Of
a lot.
course.
But he is a single caster, so he could do a spell.
To put it into,
And
can I
I
just
just
put it
think
into
I just think
context
he's
for
good.
everyone at home, just for a quick comparison? For 295 points for a Tree Lord Ancient, you 100% get a wizard with 12 wounds with a 3-up save, right? 3 attacks,
Yeah,
threes, and no, 4 attacks. No, 3 attacks, threes and threes. Rend 1,
three.
d6 damage. Compare that to a Frostheart Phoenix, which is 20 points more. An anointed, of Asurian on Frostheart Phoenix, not a Frostheart Phoenix flat. So that's a hero as well. That has 12 wounds, the same, with a 5-up save. And then if you cast a spell near it, goes to a 4-up save, or it's 4-up and it goes to a 3-up, one of the two. And
4 3.
4-up, 3-up, thank you. So it starts at a 4, goes 3. It has an aura of -1 to wound around it, and it also has a 4-up ward or DPR save. So effectively, it means it has double the wounds that you see on its War Scroll, as well as providing an army-wide buff of -1 to hit. And that's 20 points more. And I could keep going in examples, really. For another 100, for another 120 points, you've got 130 points, you've got a Gotrek. And why wouldn't you? Basically. But yeah, I agree with you.
No, exactly.
Just to clarify
Yeah.
where 295 is at in the game at the moment.
Yeah. But that's what I mean by they're winners, but they're relative winners. They're winners for our book as opposed to in the whole of
Yeah,
Age
yeah,
of
of
Sigmar
course.
necessarily. But so the biggest winner I think is Alarielle. To be honest, I think she's actually okay now.
Okay.
She's nowhere near as good as Marathi. She's nowhere near as good as Archeon. Don't get me wrong, but
And
she's
is
way better than she
priced
was.
similar.
And yeah, she is. Yeah, she's 740 points.
So more than
740
Marathi.
points. Yeah. Because she has no bonus to
Okay.
cast, which is really sad.
And she is
but
how
she
many
does have
casts?
access to
How
the
many
whole.
spells does she cast?
She's a 3-cast
Right.
wizard.
Okay.
Yeah, but she has one of her spells she can do to cast Throne of Vines, which gives her +2 cast until she
Right.
moves. But that's on a 5, so it's a bit weird. But yeah, that's essentially what you do a lot of the time, unless you're taking something like a Warsong Revenant, which you pretty much should, to be honest. He kind of because everything in the army is kind of there's no damage in the army.
Well,
That's the
that's what
big
I was
thing.
going to ask.
There
I was
isn't
like,
really
why are you not taking a giant monster? So you're saying I'm going to make my 740-point monster, combat monster, stand and do no attacking and just do spells. So what is it about Throne of Vines and her casting spells that's the reason she's not running around trying to murder stuff?
Well, essentially, but yeah, basically, it's the fact that she's a 3-cast wizard and no spells are going to go off real. If you're playing against Zeet or anything like that, you need the bonuses to cast. and you to get, because they stack. So Throne of Vine stacks, for, if you don't know at the moment. So you get +2 to cast, and then if you do Throne of Vines next turn, it goes to +4. But again, that means you're standing still with a 740 point model. And the reason I like Alarielle a lot now is because she's a lot more reliable for damage. It's not an insane amount of damage, but she can reliably do 20 damage to anything with a 5-up save. Anything that doesn't have a save against -2 rend, effectively. You can get 20 damage off, because she has 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, rend to 5 damage.
Which sounds great. Great.
It sounds good, but the reality is she's 16 wounds on a 3-up save with no ward, with no after save, no ward. So she dies to everything. So if you mess up with her, she dies effectively. So you really have to be careful what you commit her to. But the problem without her is that you don't have any pinpoint damage anymore. So one thing I've skipped over is the reason I don't run my list anymore with the swords is because swords in 6s don't work anymore, because they only have 1-inch range, and they're big models, they're big base sizes. So the coherency means that you're never going to get 6 in range. So you don't have the reliable damage, and 3 swords just don't do enough. In like as a sort of hammer unit, 3 swords just don't do enough. So you need to have an alternative. And from my play, I've experienced that Alarielle can be that. And so Alarielle does. She can do a lot of mortal wounds as well. So Metamorphosis got better on her new War Scroll. So it's whatever the casting value is of Metamorphosis, whatever the casting roll is. Sorry, you roll that many dice. Every 3-up is a mortal wound.
And do you add your bonuses to cast from things like Throne of Vines?
Yes. So it's not a modified.
Right. Okay. So if I roll a 7, which is the average, and I've cast Throne of Vines twice, I'm rolling 9 dice now because I've added +4. I've added +2 twice, basically. So I've added +4, right?
Okay. Yeah. So you'd roll that many dice. Every 3-up is a mortal wound, which is actually like 5 or 6 mortal wounds, which is pretty good.
Great.
Pinpoint mortal
It's
wound.
great. Like, everyone's terrified of Kairos' spell, which is a flat 6 mortal wounds, of course.
Exactly. But obviously the reason it's not as terrifying is because of the unreliability of it. It's cast on a 7, and you have no, unless you've already stacked up Throne of Vines and stood still, you have no bonuses.
Yeah.
So that's when it becomes problematic. Because like I say, but I quite like her as a throw into. She works quite well as she's a very expensive distraction sort of piece, but she works quite well as it.
So just for everyone at home, like one of the things that we saw a lot in last edition, so Matt can have a moment to rest his voice. One of the things that we saw in last edition was things like Archeon buffed up to the 9s, and we're going to see it in this edition as well. Charged in, would hit a flank, and then basically you would have to try and remove it. Like, you'd have to try and remove this like god character out of your lines. 20 wounds, rerolling 6s, 4-up ward against mortals, unlike Alarielle's no ward against mortals. Would kill pretty much everything he touched, -1 to hit if he was in Zinch. So he was very, very survivable, basically. Could have reroll saves from Oracular Visions. This is in the last edition. Now he can get reroll saves from Shield of Fate, so still reroll saves. And then obviously pluses to save, and then pluses to save in this edition as well. So that's what he means by a distraction piece. Imagine just throwing something unkillable at your opponent and making it so they have to try and push him out, which is kind of what Alarielle, I think, does quite well in a Sylvaneth, right? You hit the Sylvaneth front lines, and then she can fly over the top and charge at them. But the problem is she doesn't necessarily take out those god characters, right?
Nah, you don't really have any chance. Like, Marathi will obviously just batter her. Archeon, like, good luck. I played against Archeon this weekend, and with my list, and I got 20-0'd. I got 20-0 because Archeon just runs at you, and there is no chance you can kill him or do anything to him with a Sylvaneth army. I don't actually. If you played against Archeon with his buffs and you designed a Sylvaneth list just to kill him, I don't think you could do it. Even over the case of like a double turn, it's so hard to kill him, and we just don't have that kind of damage output to get through it. And the fact that so when I played Archeon, he double turned, he won the priority, charged Alarielle, used the 6 from Destiny Dice and just killed her.
The sword.
And I deployed her at the back of the board. She couldn't have been further away. So like, it's not. Sometimes you no matter how well you play with them, you're just going to get like shafted really because of how strong some of the other characters are. So she doesn't necessarily hold her weight anymore against
Yeah.
them. But she kind of if you play smart with her, you can do work with her. Um, but the big win, I suppose that everybody loves at the moment is the Warsong
This fella
Revenant.
behind me. So what is it? So what is it about the Warsong
Yeah.
Revenant that's good? Talk me through it.
So the reason he's good is because he's a two cast wizard
Sorry,
who
Matt.
has
Like, I
innate
just want to
plus
clear something
one.
up for myself before you go on to it, because I know big love. So
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah.
would you put Alarielle on your list at the moment? Do you think?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I would 100% because to be honest, there isn't. I don't like if from a competitive standpoint anyway. I wouldn't not take her because she's the only source of reliable damage to put anywhere because she moves 16.
Yep.
If because Dreadwood's dead basically. To be honest, from a competitive standpoint, so you're going to be playing Gnarl Root to get reliability because you get real ones to hit if you're a Gnarl Root.
Great.
Or you're going to be playing something like Harvest. Some people like Harvest Boon, which is reroll ones to hit on the charge. I like so Naru is reroll ones to hit within 12 of a wizard. So my whole army basically. So I like that reliability. It means I can get it on my bow hunters, which I use because I really like them. But yeah, I would always include her because she just has just being able to charge into something, tie up something, do some damage, have spell versatility, and she gets a free summon, which is nice. Yeah, but I mean, it's kind
Which I
of
guess
it's
reduces her
just trying to make
points technically, right? She's like
I mean,
740, and then you can summon a
yeah,
235 point unit, 225 point unit. Yeah.
225, yeah, for the kind of hunters. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I personally wish they'd have got rid of that mechanic and just made
200
her
points
good
better.
herself. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't like it's a weird one because I don't understand it really because it's oh yes, but you get a summon. I'm like, okay, but I'd rather she was 225 points cheaper and then I can choose what I do with those
Yeah.
points as opposed to it being automatically
Or she
tied
was
in.
225 points
And
better.
yeah,
She had like a rule, like you
yeah,
would pay
exactly,
225 points for a
exactly.
4-up ward, for example, right?
Exactly, like they'd be fantastic. It's kind of weird because the Warsong Revenant has everything I want L'Oreal to have.
Okay, well let's talk about the war
Um,
song. Let's talk about the war song.
yeah, yeah. So he's 7 wounds on a 5-up, but he has a 4-up ward save, which is massive because it's the only thing with the ward save in
Okay.
Sylvaneth. And our biggest weakness, and has been for a long time, is mortal wounds. Mortal wounds tear the army apart, and having something with a 4-up ward save actually is a huge
Yep.
deal. Especially when you have as much healing as you do in our list in our book. So the reason he's so good, or he's used a lot now, is because he's a two-cast wizard. He only has one unbind though,
Okay.
which a lot of people don't pay attention to. But he is a 2/1 wizard. But he's non-named. He's an unnamed
Right.
character. So he has +1 innately if he's within 9 of a woods, which you should be every day of the week because that's not hard to do. But the artifacts in the Sylvaneth book are actually quite good, especially for wizards. It's just we've never really had anyone to use them well. So the fact of having a two-cast wizard who can take the one I use is I run Null Root, and the one you have to take in Null Root is that you give it to a wizard, and they cast spells on 3d6, remove the lowest,
Wow.
which is actually really good. And in any other book would be like insane, but we've never had anyone to utilize that before. The best we can do really is a Tree Lord Ancient with one cast. So you know what I mean? It's never really
Ooh.
worked. Yeah, terrible. So that's why it's kind of blown up because you can his spell that he has on his War Scroll. It's called Unleash Spites, and it's casting value of 7. And you roll a dice for every for the casting
Yep.
roll. So if you're 3d6, you're on a 9. You're on +1 because you know woods. You're on 10, and everything within 9 inches of you. You roll a die. You roll a dice for the casting roll. So you roll 10 dice for every unit within
Yep.
9, and for every 5 up, they suffer a mortal
So if
wound.
I've got 3
So
units in front of me, I roll 10 dice for 1 unit, 10 dice for another unit, 10 dice for another unit. Okay.
yeah, and for every 5 ups, so you take like say you're 3 5 ups, 4 5 ups, and 3 5 ups. You take 3, 4, 3 mortal wounds on each unit accordingly, which is really good. Now the reason it gets really good, really good, is because spell portals are thing.
Yes.
So Umbral Spell Portal, you can cast it through the spell portal. So you can set up a spell portal on 3d6. It's only got a casting value of 5. So disregarding unbinds, you can get it off pretty reliably. And then you can set it up within 18, and then it's then within 9 of the 18. So you get much more pinpointy where you want to put that spell. And 3 or 4 mortal wounds into this edition, where a lot of armies are going a lot more MSU rather than horde heavy, is actually quite a big deal. So, for example, Deepkin, if you manage to get reliably 4 mortal wounds on everything, that's an eel dead.
Yeah.
From each unit that you hit, which is a big deal. So that's why he's so strong. And the other thing as well is he also knows all the spell lore, so he can do Throne of Vines, for example. So if you pair that with Cogs, the new chromatic Cogs, if you get another wizard to cast Cogs, you set up Cogs next to him. He's now a 3-cast wizard. So he could do Throne of Vines on 3d6. So he's on +3 to cast. Then you could do Spell Portal, and then you can do his Unleash Bites. So suddenly, instead of 10 dice, it's 12 dice. And again, if you don't move him, you can cast that every turn, and then you can stack that up through more mortals. Yeah. And then if you don't kill him, so say now he takes he's 7 wounds on a 5-up 4-up, effectively. So if he takes 6 damage, so I played Archaon yesterday. Archaon went into him, didn't kill him, left him on 1 wound alive.
Shocking.
Shocking, I know. It was mental to see, but if you cast a spell with him, the command in Nalroot anyway, the command trait is if he successfully casts a spell, which you should be doing realistically, he can pick a unit within 18 and heal D3.
Oh, nice. And is that every spell cast?
Not every spell cast is once per hero phase. So you can only do it once, but still that's a D3 heal. Then you can cast a spell called Regrowth, which is pick a unit, heal D6. So you're healing D3, D6. If Alariel's on the board, he's healing another D3. And obviously he's 7 wounds, but he's effectively 14 because of the ward save. So you can pretty much reliably get him back to full every single turn. So if you don't kill him, he becomes problematic, and then he's still stacking. So you have to get into him and get rid of him. So yes, so there's almost like a fight between Warsong Revenant and Alariel over who wants to do Throne of Vines. Of course. So the reason I like Alariel is because I can just stack Throne of Vines on Warsong, and then throw Alariel forward and have her be the melee piece and have him be the spell piece. Almost. While they're dealing with Alariel, if they kill her by turn 3, hopefully my guy's now on +6 to cast and can do some more. Can do enough mortals to subsidize the fact that my army doesn't do any damage. Basically, is the idea behind him. There's a few other options that I've seen people run. So I play Nalroot. I have to play Nalroot. That's the one that gives you the 3d6 cast one, though. But there's an artifact in the book that lets you auto-cast a spell a turn as long as it's from the Law of the Deepwood. So good. You could auto-cast Throne of Vines, and then you'd be on +3 to cast for your next spell. You could auto-cast a Regrowth a turn. There's downsides. You have to roll a dice on a 1, you take D3 mortals. But for the reasons I just explained, you're not really that bothered. Okay. So there's quite a few options in the book. There's an artifact that just makes him a 3-cast wizard in the book. So he's the first, like I say, he's the first 2-cast wizard that is unnamed in our book. So it gives him a lot of versatility as to what he can do with that. And having an innate +1 to cast is really, really good in that book. It's what I wish Alariel had. But she doesn't, unfortunately. Yeah.
Especially in a world of like crazy casters, right? Like, I mean, we could talk about Tzeentch obviously just picking Destiny dice, and also just have like the access to reroll casts is like pretty common. But then if you just flip over to Seraphon, they've got pluses to cast, like loads of pluses to cast, +1 from a character nearby. It feels like the Sylvaneth book just doesn't have the other little extra bits that every other book has, right? I think that's really important, and especially rerolls. And it's interesting trying to push a magic heavy build into like a magic dom meta, like Nagash, Teclis, even Kairos are all available, and they're all shutting down spells pretty effectively. So yeah, it's interesting you said that. What about in combat? Would you use the Warsong to fight, or you think it's the casting that's the good bit of the Warsong Revenant?
The casting's a good bit. He can handle himself in a fight. He's 5 attacks, threes and threes, -1, 2 damage.
Okay.
So he can handle himself in a fight. Like, he's not bad. And I always give him the +1 damage spell because he's not unique, so you can take it. So the +1, oh, what's it called? Flaming weapons, right, from the GHB. That
Yeah.
one for the +1 damage. So he's 5 attacks, threes and threes, -1,
Oh
3
wow.
damage, which is
Apart
quite
from
good.
the -1 is
Um,
quite ineffective in Age of Sigmar 3.
Yeah, exactly. -1 rend is effectively no rend, but it's not something you rely on, but it's something that if you're in a pinch and you need something to do damage, it can be quite nice. But the spells are what you're mainly taking him for, and the fan is survivability. Realistically that's what you're taking him for. But yeah, he's good. It's difficult because when you write a list, if you put him and Lariel in a list, which is what I recommend doing, the problem is you're at 1,000 points
Wow.
already because he's 275 points. So on top of Valarial 740, that's half your army in those two models. So you have to be conscious of that as you're playing as well, because you have to make sure that they're kind of doing what you're doing, what they need to do.
Because you don't have many options otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Who are the other?
So
Who are the
yeah,
other big winners? Who are the other big winners?
so other big winners, I think Tree Revenants are the big
Okay.
winners in the book because they've become almost auto includes
Okay.
now. To be honest, as battleline, in my opinion, anyway, because the ability to teleport on the board just for objective play, for charges, I think is actually. I don't see the problem with Dryads is Dryads used to be quite tanky because you could make them a 4-up save base. Well, they're 5-up save. They get +1 for being 10 or more. Then you could give them +1 save from cover, from anything, and then Trio Lynch could make them reroll ones. So they were 3-up save, -1 to hit if they were next to a woods, and that was quite good. But now it's 10 wounds on a 4-up save. You can't get better than that. I have no way to reroll. The -1 to hit doesn't really mean anything because everybody can subsidize it
+1
with
to hit.
all-out
Yeah.
attack. It kind of doesn't. I just don't see them surviving very long
Yeah.
anymore, personally. And I just prefer the option of Tree Revenants, who actually, if you use all-out attack on Tree Revenants, they're 12 attacks, threes and threes, -1 damage, which is okay if you can get a 9-inch charge into a 5-wound hero. Like they'll do some, they might kill him. Like there's potential play there. But I think for 80 points, the fact that they didn't go up, so they're 80 points. Dryads are 95, and Spite Revenants are 70 points. So I just think for the points difference you get between all three, I think Tree Revenants are what you take every day of the week.
Fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's quite cheap, really. But it's for 5, right? It's for 5 wounds.
It's for 5, yeah. It's five wounds on a 5-up save, so it's not exactly
No.
tanky. But the alternatives are for Battleline. The alternatives are Spite Revenants are 5 wounds on a 5-up save, and Dryads are 10 wounds on. Well, they're a 5-up save base, so but they go to 4-up once they're in a unit of 10. So it's not like I know it's nice to have tanky units, but the reality is neither of those units are tanky, so it doesn't really matter in my experience. But I just think you take 3 units of basic battle line, and I don't think you're ever going to take more than that. To be honest,
Really interesting.
I think you do three times whatever you want, or mix and match if you need to. If you're like 5 points over, maybe you drop 10. You drop 5 True Revenants to put in a unit of spites to save 10 points. But I don't think you ever take more than that, to be honest. Unless you really fancy going Dryad heavy.
Yeah, because you can't do what you can do in other
30,
armies, right? Like, so let me just get this right. I can't. Can I take a bunch of 30 because Dryads come in 10s, right?
They do come
Can
in
I take
10s,
a bunch of 30 Dryads and buff them up so they're going to murder stuff, or is that not very likely?
No. So there's no real synergies to do with that. So the best you could probably do is put them in Winterleaf. So 6s to hit, explode into 2 hits. you could give them +1 attacks.
They've got 2 attacks base each, right?
And then they got
So
2
that'd be
attacks
3.
base each, and they do have 2-inch range. So if you got all 30 of
Yeah.
them in, and then you have 90 attacks, 4s and I guess in the best case scenario, you'd be on 3s and 4s because they're 4s and 4s, but they can sing a song in your combat phase at you need to get +1 because the book loves sing songs. So 3s and 4s, no rend, 1 damage.
No rend, 1 damage,
No
90
rend.
attacks.
No rend.
And how much is for that unit?
That is, what's it, 95 times 3, so 285.
That's cheap. Like, but so do they still get +1 save if they
Yeah,
have over 12 models?
over
Over
10.
10. And that's not to their
Yeah,
characteristic. Is that +1 save to their save rolls?
it's +1 to their
And
save
what that
rolls.
means is that doesn't stack, unfortunately,
Yeah,
with Mystic
no.
Shield. Like you can have a 4-up
Yeah.
save ignoring Rens, etc., etc., etc. Like I
Mhm. Yeah,
explained earlier.
yeah,
But yeah, you can't give them a 3-up save like Angle's hoping for in the chat. So sorry about that. That is something you guys are going to want to look
yeah.
at. For instance, Seraphon have got Starbuckler shields, and they add +1 to your save roll, not to your characteristic, which means you can't then add an additional +1 anywhere else. Which maybe we'll see in an FAQ, maybe we won't, but that would be cool. So you don't really.
Yeah, yeah, no.
So you don't think I could create like a brick wall of dryads to hit stuff? So you would prefer to take the minimum cheap stuff and take more elite things like Colonel Hunters?
I think so. I think that's where the meta's heading, and the problem with dryads is that you could use them as like an objective holder, if you wanted to. But the problem is that like anything anything top end in competitive play will kill 30 dryads in a turn.
What about anything
That's the
medium
thing
end in competitive play? Probably also kill them.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's not like 30 wounds on a 4-up save, which you can't get better than. You're not gonna. That doesn't last
No.
long at all. And they'll just get wiped out, and then they won't have done much. And I know it's cheap, but if you're trying to write a list where you have Alariel and Warsong in to do damage, then that's a third of what you have left. So yeah. So it becomes difficult.
It's fair. No, it's super fair.
So
I think you've made a good
you
point. I
definitely
just
could
wanted
do.
to ask because I think
Yeah,
that I think sometimes in
yeah,
these shows people are going to want to have asked questions. So I'm trying to think of the audience what they would ask.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
What
no, of
about
course.
the
I
what?
think I think you definitely can. I mean, I don't think it's bad. I think you could do like Alariel Warsong, 30 Dryads, like maybe 3 Kurnoths, and a Branch Wraith. I'm sure that'd be fine. It's just I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think it's as optimal because I just think they see 30 Dryads and they'll just go kill
Yeah.
it. And then
Plus, there are so many other units which we could do a price comparison again. I think there's a lot of units that can kick a Dryad's ass, and I think your point is really good. Hey, Big Goldfish in the chat, big love to you, and also Owen Jackson, a fellow Treekin. By the way, my deep love, Sylvaneth OG right here. Sylvaneth, my army. I own 12 Tree Lords, Tree Lord Ancient hybrids, which are all
yeah.
conversions. 150 dryads, like I'm all in on Sylvaneth, like all in. I'm just waiting for the moment. And unlike Matt, I'm not a sadist. Like I won't just like beat myself up playing this horrific army for time. Again, 38% win rate. That is not cricket. Okay, what about the Wildwoods? Explain the Wildwoods to me. Did they get better?
So
What's
they got
happening?
they got different.
Different.
So
Okay, different's
so
good.
so so they got better, and then they FAQ'd them to be not better again. So then we had the better ones for about a month, and then they got rid of them again, which was an interesting one. So at
Okay.
the end of 2, when Kragnos came out, Broken Realms Kragnos,
Hmm.
they gave us a new War Scroll for Woods, and the War Scroll let us see through our own woods, which has been a problem for Sylvaneth for a while. So
Right.
if you imagine,
What was the
I
problem?
have 3 pieces of like I have a Wildwood here,
Hmm.
and I have my Branch Wraith here, and I have Dryads here, and I can cast a spell called like Verdurous Harmony or Mystic Shield, for example. I could do Mystic Shield on them. If I'm more than an inch away, I can't see them. That was the ruling before. But now they changed it so that if you have to be 3 inches deep to block line of sight, and they changed it so that Sylvaneth ignored that, so that you could see through your own woods. So you could hide like bow hunters in woods, see through, so you could shoot, but they couldn't shoot you back. It opened up a lot of doors, to be honest, for a lot of different stuff. And
Yeah.
then we had that for a month, and then they brought out the FAQ for 3, and they got rid of that basically. So they removed everything, and they changed. So wildwoods do if you at the end of the charge phase, if you're within an inch of the trees on a 6, you take D3 mortal wounds. But they changed it so that if there was an endless spell or a wizard within 6 of it, it did it on a 4-up, which was actually a lot more scary.
Yes.
But then they got rid of that, so that's not a thing anymore. So it's still just on a 6. But what they did change was it used to be you could have 3 to 6 wildwoods when you set up a wildwood. So you could have 3 pieces, make up a wildwood, or you could have up to 6, so 3, 4, 5, 6. They changed it so you could have 1 to 3. So you could have 1, 2, or 3 wild pieces. What are they called? They're not Citadel Woods anymore, but the individual wildwoods make up an awakened wildwoods.
Yes.
So you could place an individual wood, which everybody was very happy with because it meant that because the woods, when you place them, they have to be 3 inches away from everything.
Yes.
So it meant that, and 6 inches away from terrain, they used to have to be away from objectives. Sorry. So it meant that it was actually quite difficult to place them. So being able to just put one down so that you had giving you that option of a teleport there was actually quite a big deal. And then they got rid of that. So the way it works now is that you can set up when you start and when you cast it when you set up any wildwoods during the game, you can place you can place 3 sets of 1, or you can set up 1 set of 3. So
Okay.
you can, and it's all within range, and the first one to start the game has to be wholly within your territory. So that's actually really strong, I think, for our army.
That's good.
Relatively so. I think it's really good because it means that you can have one little small one here that'll give you as much interaction as you need. So wholly within 6 to teleport, +1 for the Warsong Revenant. If you're clever, you can summon 10 dryads on them with a branch wraith if you have it. You have to be cautious about it because it's quite difficult to do, but you can theoretically do it. And then you can have 1 forward. So I've done it a few times. So in my list, I run 6 bow hunters, and I can. So bow hunters have a 30-inch range. But what a lot of people do is they measure 30 from the bow hunters so that their whatever thing they want to keep alive or vulnerable thing is 30 inches away.
Yeah.
So I played Fabian this weekend, lovely guy, and he kept his blue scribes 30 inches away, 36 inches away. So he was like, "You can't shoot me," because blue scribes is what gives each the reroll casting rolls.
Yeah.
But then I could teleport them through that because I didn't have to worry about casting a spell to get the trees off. I just had 3 separate little trees.
Yep.
Put them in range and then shot them off. So it gives you a lot more versatility, and I really prefer it. Like so in my 6 games, in 3 of them, I have a lot of woods. I have way too many woods. I have more woods than any human should ever have.
Hey,
but I didn't.
holding
I
my
didn't
hand up
pick
to
all of
having
them.
9 plates of woods. Old woods. This is old wood money. I don't know what new wood money is, but a lot of trees, basically.
A lot of trees. Well, I have in total I have 9 sets of wildwoods of the new ones. So I have 27 trees, individual trees.
Which is a cost you don't really think about when you start buying the army, right?
So much. But I took 15 with me because I thought that'd be plenty, and I ran out 3 times during my 6 games.
Yeah.
From placing them, which is actually really, really good because it meant that I had so much options of where to go, what I was doing with my spells.
Which was one of the weaknesses in 2nd edition.
Yeah, exactly. Was not being able to get woods where you wanted them, but being able to place, because the only condition is they have to be 3 inches away from all of the terrain, including themselves. But you can get 1 in pretty much everywhere. So you can do things like you can really mess up people's movement. Because they can't move over the middle bit. So you just kind of have a little like thing and then put a 3rd one, so they have to kind of zigzag around, and it'll only save you an odd inch, but sometimes an odd inch is all you need.
Yeah, of course.
So I really like new trees. I think they're really versatile, and they offer you a lot of different options, to be honest.
Great news.
Yeah.
Any more winners? Any more winners?
So I think 2 of the endless spells. Actually, before we go to endless spells, I think Kurnoth Hunters are technically winners. The point cost was horrible, obviously, and losing reroll saves was obviously horrible. But we kind of all knew that was going to happen somewhere inside us. But they still do a good job. So 3 swords are still fine. They still will put in work. I don't like scythes. I never have, and I never will.
So is there not an argument for scythes with them having 2-inch range and being able to attack over the top?
I mean, there's a lot of play you can do with scythes. Like, so scythes have a 2-inch range, so you can put a screen in front of them. You can hit something back with the sides. But the problem is the amount of times I've ever seen that happen is minimal. Like
You have to be
everyone talks
pretty
about it.
dumb to run into the screen with the sides behind.
This is
Like,
what I mean. Like I've never like the reality is I use each a lot as an example, but Kairos will just delete the screen and then they'll charge you with what they want you to charge you with. Like that
yeah,
happens more often than anything else. There is play with sides. Like I'm sure there'll be someone who plays like 6 sides or 2 units of 6 sides and does okay with them.
and they
But I
might
just
win two
don't.
games.
Maybe they'll win 2 games, maybe. But I just don't. There's no reliability to them. I don't like the fact that I can like. I don't like that I can put them in and go. They might do 4 damage, or they could kill this thing. Like especially with the new edition with battle tactics. Because if I throw 6 sides into something, I need to know if I'm doing like slay the warlord to kill their general, and I throw 6 sides in that, I need to know that I'm going to be doing that because if they fail, then I'm in trouble because I'll have lost
I
two
think that's a
points. Yeah,
brilliant point about this edition actually, because of battle tactics. You need to guarantee. Like, you
yeah,
need to guarantee. Played a game at the weekend. I had 3 Varangard charge my Kairos. That was his battle tactic, to kill a general, or the general, or whatever it was, or a monster, bring it down. He needed to kill him, didn't kill him by like 2 wounds. This is Mark Meermouse, wonderful fella. And that means he went down 2 points in that particular matchup, and that's pretty huge. So I think your point about reliability is even more important in this edition than it was in the last
yeah,
edition. So I can completely see your argument for having swords.
yeah. Yeah, so that's personally why I like swords. Ironically, I don't take swords. I do summon them a lot of the time with the L'Oreal. But I personally like 6 bow hunters
Okay.
because I think that all out attack is actually really good on them. So being able to hit on threes, so they're 12 attacks, threes and threes, rerolling ones to hit in my list, -1 D3 damage,
And
which
30-inch
is
range.
a 30-inch range,
Wow.
importantly, and unleash hell is a thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so it just offers you different ways of like in the example that you have 3 sides behind a unit of like 5 true revenants. If they charge you, they kill your true revenants, and you get to they get to attack the you get to hit them back.
Mm.
Whether with the bows, you get to shoot them before they even get to do that. Is my experience. So I played a wonderful game against Matt Goldsborough, and
Mm.
he was running his 15 wind charges
For in Lumineth Realm Lords, yeah.
in Lumineth Realm Lords, and he really struggled to deal with the bows because he couldn't charge anywhere because they're only on a 5-up save, and in the charge phase you can't all out defense. So
Yep.
when so they charge, and even though the kernels are hitting on fives, with the rerolls you still get a few hits, and all you need is a couple on a 5-up save. So he had a 6-up save, and he couldn't commit anywhere because anywhere he committed, I could just shoot off a couple, and a couple like I shot off. I think I shot off 5 the first time he charged, and that's a third of the unit. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of options you have a lot of the time where you can just ping off a few wounds, and in a list where you're relying mainly damage wise on Warsong Revenant and Alarielle, I think, in
Yeah.
the book in general. I think they're going to be where your mortal wounds come from. Alarielle's where it's going to be damage from. Maybe you take Durthu, so you can do some offensive damage. I think he's pretty good, especially being able to be on a 2-up save. I think he still struggles a bit with the fact that any mortal wounds get him down to things. So I think if you take the what's the new universal artifact called? The 5-up
The,
ward save one.
the Talisman of Protection,
That's
the
the one.
whatever it is, the 5-up DPR.
Yeah, I think I
Sorry,
think
Ward.
Ward. Yeah, so I think there's play there potentially. If you took him, you could have him as a damage output thing. Um, but I think that my experience is that I tend to do like so. For example, 3 wounds to something, 4 wounds to something else with Warsong. Alarielle maybe does 4 mortal wounds, kills something, and then something's alive on 1 wound, or something I need to kill is alive. Then I have the option of going, okay, these 6 bows are going into that thing. And I don't need them to do insane damage because they're never going to touch things on a 2-up save.
Mm.
Realistically, -1 range, you're just not going to do anything. But if you can get 2 shots through, and then that's 2d3 damage, you can do 4 damage, and sometimes that can be quite good. So I like shooting Kairos all the time with them. But they just offer you a little bit more pinpoint precision, which the army you're kind of doing anyway, and that kind of leans a bit more into it. Is how I do it. And a lot of people like to take Like you could take two times three swords instead. And then you have a bit more melee prowess, and they're a bit more difficult to deal with. But my problem is that I'm trying to minimize the amount of my playstyle is to try and minimize the amount of opponents I have by the time they get to me, because when they get to me, everything I have is going to die. So I would like to minimize the amount of things that are going to hit me like a truck before they get to me, as opposed to try and fight them when they do get here.
Yes.
If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, loads and loads. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, for battle tactics, like it kind of like if they've got a monster like a Terrorgeist or something like that, you can shoot it, do spell portal metamorphosis with a Lariel, and you can theoretically kill him. So that's kind of why I like it.
Yeah. Okay, what about, we've had a couple of questions in chat, and I promise I will get to them, but we're kind of slowly covering them as we go through. Any other winners, or are we on to the losers yet? Although we've covered most of the book.
Yeah, we've covered most of the book, yeah. The only two other wizards, the winners, I think, are, Hive, so Spitesworn Hive.
Yes.
Is a definite winner, because it still gives you the +3 charge on a 2-up, but it activates, it used to, but no one ever remembered, but at the end of every hero phase, everything within 8 inches you roll a dice for. On a 2-up, they get +3 to move and charge. Or you roll a dice on a 2-up, they get +1 to save.
Yeah.
Until the end of the turn. So that's 40 points.
That's brilliant.
So that's really good. So that is if you're doing a monster heavy list that is going to stand still, that is really good. That for a Durthu, that for a Trio Ancient is really, really good. Especially for ignoring Rend on a 2-up save.
Yeah, of course.
So that's really good. That's still good. And I think the secret one that I really like is Vengeful Skullroot.
Okay.
Because it's one of the few endless spells that does D6 mortal wounds. It's situational D6 mortal wounds, but it kind of works well. So it's on a 2-up, it does D3 mortal wounds.
Okay.
But if the unit you're targeting is within 3 of a Wildwoods, which you can set them up within 3 of an enemy, it does on a 2-up, it does D6. And obviously with the spells, it doesn't double tap by itself, but at the end of your enemy hero phase, if they don't unbind it, as cast a value of 6, after all a 7 on a dispel, then it'll do another d6 mortal wounds. So that into something like Gargants is actually a lot of mortal wounds to just throw at them and they can't do anything about. So I really like that. But yeah, that's the end of my winners, I think.
Okay, so a couple of questions in the chat. Matt, what do you think about the tree song? I think that spell got hella good with all the tree spam.
Yeah, so Tree Song's interesting. The issue with Tree Song is it's still a 16-inch range, regardless of the fact that it's one of the most difficult spells. It's do you know what Tree Song is?
Tell me.
Do you remember? So it's casting value of 7. It's pick a unit within 16, within 6 of a Wildwood, I think it is, and you can reroll 1s to hit and wound against that target.
Okay.
So yes, there is definitely.
So it's kind of like Lambent Light from Lumineth Realmlords, but for Sylvaneth. Yeah. But it's for units in 16 or wholly within 16.
It's a unit within 16, but within 6 of a woods. So there's 2 restrictions.
Oh, okay.
So previously, that's been really difficult to get off. No, as in you pick an enemy unit.
Yeah. No, I get it. That's why it's like Lambent Light, right?
Yeah. And then you get real instead. And yes, I agree. Yes, massively so. That on bow hunters, that for a target for bow hunters is fantastic, because your whole army gets it. So shooting phase, combat phase, you get it. So yeah, it's really, really good. It's still situational, I think. Okay. I don't think you'd ever do it through spell portal. I think you'd want either metamorphosis or you'd want the Warsong spell through that. I don't think you would cast it through there. But yes, I agree. Yeah, I think Tree Song is really, really good now situationally. So.
Okay, a couple of
the other ones not so much.
Okay, next question: do you ever cosplay as a Lariel during competition events?
I do now.
Perfect answer. All right, so we got any losers in the book? Any losers other than the book? I think
other than I was going to say I think the whole book generally, but I think Kurnoths themselves are like the points increase that they had percentage wise is huge. Like you can talk about averages across the book as much as you want, but the points cost for Kurnoths was massive. And when it happened, it felt like the reason that it was going so high was because of the fact that they were getting reroll saves. And then the fact that they removed that, it's a little bit feels bad for me, because I don't think that they should be that many points, to be honest.
I agree.
I remember I had a conversation with Dan Arnold before, who's a very good deep
And
game
a
player.
great guy.
Before, great guy before in AOS 2, and we had a discussion about when Kurnoth Hunters dropped in points. We had a discussion about where Eels and Kurnoths were, and we compared their war scrolls, and we dictated that they were very similar, and we thought that they should be around the same
Mm.
points. And now, if you ask him, that conversation never happened. But if you look at the points differential between the three units now,
Yeah.
it's massive, and we've lost one of our abilities. So it's yeah, I don't know. I think it's as much as I love Kurnoth still, I think they're not as strong as they were last edition, by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and 225 points is pretty obnoxious points wise for that unit. It really is, and I can completely understand why. And some of the restrictions, Matt's obviously talked about the ability to put down forests everywhere, but also the fact that they're movement 5 and they're a combat unit. Like, combat is good when you can choose to strike first, and the way that the very original way, the old schoolist way, is to be the person who charges first. That's the most old schooly way, and that means movement is kind of key to be able to achieve that, and they just never were fast enough to really get there. But I like you putting the bow hunters in, because it means the opponent has to feel threatened. They have to come and get the bow hunters. So maybe you could do something in counter-charging with at that point. But your ability to go... But then I don't think that that's a massive deal, if I'm honest. Like, having played through some of the battle plans at the minute, I don't think you necessarily have to go and grab your opponent's army turn 1. You can score quite big on turn 1 by just grabbing an objective or two and then doing a battle tactic. So... interesting on that one.
But the idea is that while that is also true, the idea is that you're scaring your opponent, because if they don't come get you, then you're still stacking that +2.
Of course.
That's the only thing that makes the army kind of scary, is the fact that you are going. You know, if I have no need to engage you because you're not engaging me, I can just send some tree revenants to get the objectives, and I decide, you know what, I'm going to stack on Alarielle instead of Warsong, and I get +6 on Alarielle, and then you move forward. Suddenly, if I get Metamorphosis off on, say, I roll a 7 to cast, that's a 13. So that's 13 dice. That's like 11 mortal wounds.
Yeah.
So
which is significant. 11 mortal wounds at range is significant. Yeah.
I mean, you have stood still for 3 turns to get that, but...
with 700 points, or maybe. Yeah, I completely understand.
It's a hell of an investment, but like you can do it situationally. So.
Okay. So what lists have you been running?
So the list I've run is the one I'm doing at the moment is Alarielle, Warsong Revenant, 6 Bow Hunters, Branch Wraith, 3 units of 5 Tree Revenants, Cogs, Spell Portal, and Skullroot. That's my list at the moment. And then I have the 3d6 to cast on the Warsong Revenant. I have it's called Nurtured by Magic, I think, the command trait, which is whenever he casts a spell, he can heal D3 once per turn. Once per turn. And I have it all in in the 1-drop battalion, so it's all one unified. So I get to dictate who goes first or second the majority of the time, unless they have a 1-drop as well.
Okay, amazing.
That's what I run. Yeah.
Amazing. So I'm going to ask you later after the show, just FYI. So for everyone, there's definitely going to be, the list will be written up on the Honest Wargamer website, because that's one of my jobs today. And also, so honestwargamer.com, and you just click Sylvaneth, you'll be able to find Mat Mallow's list from the faction reaction. And then maybe Matt will also take the time to write some thoughts up on there as well to accompany this show, which will be really cool. Matt, I can't thank you enough. I think you've absolutely we've basically covered the whole book, I think. And what's really nice is I know the book isn't strong competitively because all of the numbers support that. But what's really nice is you've made that effort for years to keep pushing it. And even then, everything you were like positive. You were like, it's kind of like you could do this. Like, and I love that. Like, I love that effort that you're still putting into the army, which I think is great. You got any shout outs you want to give before we head out for the day?
Well, the one more thing I want to say is the fact that so even though we had a 38% win rate last year, I was on Meta Breakers and I had I think it was 74% win rate.
You had a 74% win rate.
I did. Yeah.
So the 38% is mainly you lifting. You must be knackered. The amount you've carried a whole faction on your back for a year. You must be so tired.
I've got about 4 chiropractors. Yeah. But I think if you really hate yourself enough and you really really want to do it, you can. But I think there's some fun now. I think it's less painful to play them in this edition than in last edition.
And that's important.
Because in this edition, I think if you play against the list you lose against, I think you'll get tabled but in 2 turns. Whereas in the old edition, you had like scraps left, so that's fine.
Okay, there's a quick question. We didn't touch on Drycha. I haven't heard any comments on it. Have you got any thoughts about Drycha?
Sorry, I pretend Drycha doesn't exist because Adam does my head in about Drycha.
Do.
So I like Drycha. The problem I have with Drycha is she does one thing once. She does her attacks. You move her forward, she shoots, and then whatever comes back at her kills her.
Yep.
That's the problem. Is she doesn't survive anything, and you have to commit her to do any damage. That's what my experience is with her anyway. I think if she could take enchanted weapons or the spell, then potentially it could be better. But I just think without that, I still think she has play, but I just don't. So much stuff just point, click, delete her before she does anything, and I don't know. I don't like Drycha personally. I know some people love Drycha. I know Adam won't shut up about her, but I personally don't like
That's
her.
fair. I think that's super fair.
But like, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Well, listen, Matt, it's been lovely. You got any shout outs? Anyone you shout out?
I've got to do the usual shout out just to Adam and the Troll Slayers, of course.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to shout out Arthur regardless. Otherwise, he won't have got shouted out on a faction reaction, which would be a mistake. So I'll make sure that happens. I want to thank everyone in the chat, of course. If you guys are watching this live for the first time, obviously you can join us live on Twitch, like we do. We're live every day at midday. Mondays we talk Age of Sigmar. We normally do event coverage from tournaments on the T Sports Network, or you can go on to wargamer.com. That's another place where we have lists, and I'm going to be putting loads of Age of Sigmar 3 lists over the next week or two for you guys to read through and have a chat about. And then you can also listen to this as a podcast if you want to, so I think this is good. But I hope you're all well. Thanks, Matt, again. Massive love for doing this today. This is the second show for me today, so very much looking forward to a cup of tea. But I've loved this. Thank you. Big love and big hopes for Sylvaneth soon. But more on that in the future. Thanks, Matt. You look after yourself, and thanks everyone for listening to The Honest Wargamer.